So you're very welcome to Paralympics Ireland's year to go. Today we are looking at paracycling. I'm really fortunate to be joined by three of Ireland's top paracyclists. We have Richael Timothy, Ronan and Declan Slevin. Guys, you're very welcome and thank you for making time.
Thanks.
So it's been a strange experience for the nation, but for you guys as well. Richael, going to start with you. How has lockdown treated you as a cyclist?
Yeah, I suppose at the start of lockdown, obviously like everyone else, we just thought it'd be 2 weeks, 4 weeks or whatever, maybe back to normal. So for cycling, I suppose we're lucky in that we can train indoors on a turbo. So when the lockdown started, just everything was on the turbo because the 2 kilometre restriction, like there wasn't worthwhile going out for 2 kilometre loop. So then for me, I live in the countryside. So when it went up to the 5 kilometres and that, I was able to get out on the road, which is good as well. I just find with my impairment, I'm better being out on the road than being on a turbo. I can just move around more. So for being on a turbo, like you put your bike on it. So you are using the bike you will be using, but you just don't have as much movement in that. So once I went up to the 20k, then I was fine. Basically, I could go. There's a lot of country roads. I could go a lot of places and that. But again, it was just training by yourself because obviously there was no group competitions or anything happening. So it was good in that I'm relatively new to cycling. So I suppose having that extra block of training where it wasn't like interrupted with different competitions and that, it was good. Like, and I could kind of focus on my own bit of gym work.
So you've maintained your fitness at the very worst over lockdown, which is really good for you.
Yeah, like it was all kind of about keeping going. You weren't really sure what you're aiming for in that, like as the weeks went on, some competitions were cancelled and others were just like not cancelled, but like they were thinking of rescheduling them. So you were trying not to, like, you weren't really necessarily aiming for anything in particular. You were just keeping your fitness, and it was letting you do the longer hours that you mightn't have got done if you were working. We'll say if I was working full time, whereas when the lockdown came first, I'm just doing stuff from home. So it was grand. It gave me more time really.
Ronan, you're a Galway man, but you're living and working in Dublin right now during this whole situation. So you don't have those country roads, but you're able to get out and do a bit, I assume, around Dublin.
Yeah, so it was similar to Richael then. I mean, with 2k and 5k restrictions, it's not you can't really get too far, really. You can't get any proper training, but being able to train indoors on your indoor trainer using online platforms like Swift, it opens up a lot of possibilities. It can keep you engaged for a lot longer, and it meant even though it might be a bit, might be a bit boring in terms of looking at a screen for 3 or 4 hours doing your training, you could still get it in. So you weren't really impacted in terms of not being able to train at any stage. It was more so just the uncertainty around whether or not an event was going to go ahead. So what exactly you were planning for. And that was probably the most difficult part. So once clarification, around what events were going to be held that year, or, if any, then you could really kind of just refocus and train towards different things. So really, similar to Richael there, for me, it's just been getting in a really big extended base period of training that you wouldn't, in previous years, you wouldn't have gotten in, because you would have been, during the winter at least, you would have been away training for track competitions. So you wouldn't have had this extended base period of training that you might otherwise get. So it was a good kind of experiment to spend 6-7 weeks just focusing on aerobic training and seeing the benefits that can produce. And that's something that can be brought into next year for planning for competitions then.
Guys, I just need to... So Declan, you have a little bit of a different experience to Ronan and Richael from your lockdown, because you're based on a farm in Westmeath, so there's been no looking at Zoom calls for work or anything like that. How has the experience been for you?
It's been much the same as Ronan was saying, getting plenty of training in, but it would have been good to have got out on the road more and got maybe a couple of road camps in with the whole group, and that we kind of missed out on all that sort of thing. And I also used to go up to the institute once a week there as well for training with Noel and seeing Paul, the physio, and that. And keeping a track of where you're at on your fitness side of it that way, and missing out on that. So it'd be good to get back to that side of things. But as regards the road training on the road and all that, I haven't seen any difference than before. And I'm getting a couple of, since they opened up restrictions for bicycles on the road and that, and doing club TT leagues and that, I've been joining in as many of them as I can, you know.
You've all spoken about the isolation that's happened during lockdown. And one thing that strikes me about the paracycling panel is that it's quite social. You cycle together, you train together, you go to camps together. How has it been for you? I'll start with you, Richael. How has it been for you adjusting to being so on your own on the bike without the other athletes around you? And how have you dealt with that situation?
Yeah, I suppose when we're on camp, like, you know, you're cycling, you get your cycling train done, and then you're back at the house, and everyone's just talking like whatever. It's very yeah, it is very social. Like, so now we'll say I haven't seen any of the guys really, unless I've seen them at a TT or whatever, but you're doing everything by yourself. So like, you might have done a few even club spins. So let's say with my local club, I might have gone out with them twice a week or that, and then when the restrictions were there, you were just doing everything by yourself. So it's basically like training solo, because I know people say cycling is a solo sport when I'm competing, like, or whatever, I'm competing. There's no other Irish girl in my category or whatever, but like, we still train as a team, and we're still a group in everything we do, especially if we're over like in Mallorca or on the track. Everyone's down at the track, and then different people are doing their efforts to that, but we're all one go. Yeah, it has been different, and even looking at calendar as to where we should be now and where we should have been at so many different camps and all that. So yeah, it's different, but it's the same for every other sport, I think. So it's not just the cyclists, I suppose.
Ronan, you mentioned, so you guys have used Zwift and you've used other platforms to stay in touch. Has that been a help? Do you feel like having that link into the other cyclists in some way has been a help?
Yeah, as a team, we've had online Zwift meetups like during the height of lockdown, and I mean, while it's no substitute for meeting up in person, it is nice just to have that interaction with your teammates there. Because like a big competition, you could be spending, I mean, if it was a track competition, you could be probably spending 3 weeks together, and you're going through every hard training session together. So you share that experience with them. So then I suppose you bond quite well with your team then, and then there's, I suppose, that big expectation and excitement leading up to an event. So you're missing out on all that, but having Zwift there, being able to meet up like virtually online was I mean, it was no substitute, but at least it was something to do.
And Declan, have you had that same release or that same involvement by using the likes of Zoom or Zwift or the other platforms that are available?
Yeah, we've had our Zoom meetings there, so that's been good, like, because it was involving the whole panel there. Everyone that could make it was ahead. And also, say, Swift, I've used Swift, signed up to that for a year. So it's, say, if you have a good 3-hour session and the weather's bad outside or whatever, you can just sit on the bike and do your efforts on that. And no, it's been good, like, but the internet out here in the country wouldn't be that good, so it's swirling a bit, you know.
That's why I asked you that question, Declan. Being on the farm, you may have a slightly different experience of using that technology.
Yeah. No, but it's been interesting. Like it's opened up to new things that you learn about. Like I'd say Swift are very happy this lockdown came. You know?
Yeah, I'd say there's a few platforms that are delighted. You mentioned, Declan, about getting access to the institute once a week and how you used to do that, and obviously working with coaches and everything. Have you still been able to maintain any of that contact using the different technologies that are available?
Yeah, had an interesting physio session with Paul there one day. So we're working on different things, and just I had a niggle on my shoulder there. He was showing me ways of how to get rid of that, or how to work it out myself on a Zoom call. So, you know, it's amazing what they can teach you, and you can learn from just a phone call. Like, so I'd say the amount it has, as regards even people working, I'd say a lot of people have figured out they can probably work from home a lot more than having to get up at 5 o'clock and heading for Dublin in the morning. So
now you might be getting up at 5 o'clock anyway, but for different reasons. How's the farm been? What type of farm do you have?
and dry cattle. So I have a couple of cows calving there earlier in the year, but what we call an easy calving bull is what I have.
Okay.
So it goes easy on them.
So you're working from home in that way. It like you've maintained a lot of the routine throughout. I would imagine that you've had in every other
Yeah,
year.
I haven't seen much change. Only having a lot more family around, which is good as well. But I'd say we're getting on each other's nerves now at this stage.
Are there many in the house with you, Declan?
3 kids and the wife as well. So.
Okay, so you're all
So
very
I have
close.
one young lad there. He's 9 years of age, so he's going from one cool camp to another. So at the minute, so
Well, it
it's
keeps
great to
them all
have them
entertained.
things back for the kids, and they'll be start back to school shortly, hopefully as well. So that'll be good. And another girl is in college, so she's figuring out whether they'll be going back for accommodation and that sort of stuff.
Very
Which I'm
difficult
hoping
time.
that she doesn't, because it'll be a lot easier on my pocket if she does it from home.
It's a very difficult time for everyone, and maybe for your pocket. But you mentioned the schools there, Declan, which kind of feeds into Rochelle, what you do for a living. So, well, if you could explain what you do and really the uncertainty maybe that surrounds that type of work right now.
Yeah, so I work with Roscommon Sports Partnership. So we just go around schools teaching cycle right or going through different sports. So we do Gaelic soccer, rugby, all the basics basically, like fundamental skills and that. So yeah, when the lockdown happened, like it would have been our peak time for going around to schools, because March, April, May, the fine months and that, and you can get the kids out in the yard. So when that happened, what we had to do was just change everything to online and like YouTube videos. So we'd be doing like skills challenges, all that sort of stuff. So now we just wait until, I'd say we'll probably give the schools a month to see how they're working with everything and whether they want us in doing stuff. Like obviously the kids are going to still have to do some form of PE and that. So it'll just depend on the numbers and obviously the restrictions. And I think the way it's going to work is if we can get some outdoor stuff done with them before it gets into the bad winter months, at least then, they'll have done something besides just being in the classroom all day. So it's just a wait and see for most of our work anyways.
It's so uncertain right now for you. Does that weigh in your mind at this stage, Rochelle, considering that work is you don't know where that lies, and also from a sporting point of view, we're still waiting to see what the calendar will bring?
Yeah, I suppose, like looking back, my plan was to finish work in April anyway with the games if they had gone ahead this year. So then looking to next year, I'm just going to kind of, luckily enough, they're very like obliging in that they said like they took me straight back in to work and said, you can go as far as April next year and then take the time you would have taken off. So for me, that's good. But yeah, it's hard to know, because we can only really plan 2 weeks ahead, like with the sports partnership, because again, a restriction could come in or the government might change something and then we'd have to redo everything. And as well, it's part of Sport Ireland, so it's kind of coming from the top, and then we just have to meet all the criteria before we can go out and do anything. So I think it does, principals kind of have a say as well as to whether they take the Roscommon Sports Partnership or they want to avail of some of the services. So I think this year it's going to be a lot different, as to like parents mightn't want people out of the school going in and that. So we're just going to have to wait and see, yeah.
But I think the message is that sport is really important for kids, especially school-going kids.
Yeah, definitely. Like when the lockdown happened, they were just trying to get us to get as many videos out there, because kids were stuck inside all day, even more than they would have been at school. So I think as well, you noticed with the GA and soccer, and when all that came back, like there was kids back playing football that hadn't played in years. And it just shows how important sport is. Like the parents just wanted to get them out, and obviously it's good for your health every sort of way. So yeah, we're just going to hope that, I know everything has gone very serious, and when they do go back to school, that teachers will keep that in mind, like the importance of sport, and not try and, have everything right in the classroom and kind of forget about the PE side. So it is just really important to keep that in mind.
Ronan, so your type of work is different. You're office based. So have you been doing a lot through Zoom and through the other platforms like that?
Yes. So we are office based, and really since the 16th of March, I think we've been working completely from home. So again, it's similar stuff like that. It's just been Skype meetings all the time, or Adobe meetings. So well used to these online meetups at this stage.
you have so you probably have a greater understanding of the virus and what it means than most of us, because of the nature of what your work is. You're not right on the coalface with COVID, but you may see some involvement with a vaccine in the future. Can you explain in layman's terms what it is you do?
Yeah, so I work for the Health Products Regulatory Authority. So that in Ireland, that's the medicines regulator. And essentially, I work in the safety department. So we're involved in really, once a drug is placed on the market, to ensure that the benefit risk profile of a drug is positive, so that the side effects aren't too severe in comparison to the benefit that the medicine is providing. So really, once we see vaccines coming through for authorization, so once a company has put vaccines through such large enough trials and has enough information on the efficacy and safety of a trial, that will go to the European Medicines Agency, which is kind of the centralized regulator for all of Europe, which the Health Products Regulatory Agency sits in. And so our department will be looking at the safety side of things. So before it is authorized, we'll be looking at a risk management planning side, so trying to see what the risk might be associated with a vaccine. And then once it's released onto the market, we'll be looking at the safety side. So making sure that there aren't any unknown side effects, or how we deal with any unknown side effects that might occur. So yeah, it'll be quite a busy time, I think, once these vaccines start coming through, but exciting as well.
For a lot of your friends, it's really specialized work you do. It's quite hard for people like us or lay people to understand. So are you fielding a lot of questions from friends who are saying, have you cured it yet, or anything like that?
Yeah, like you get a lot of from relations and parents, you get a lot of questions, but really I think it's still in such a preliminary stage that there's no concrete information out there on any vaccines yet. So I think two or three vaccines are in phase 3 trials, which are the big trials that are done before a company will bring it towards looking for marketing approval. So really, we don't have any information yet on that. So I suppose it's such a new, it is like a brand new virus that everybody's in the dark, really, and its situation's constantly evolving. So even though people might be asking questions, it's very hard to give any definite answers with such a novel virus.
During the whole experience of lockdown, you've obviously been working a lot on your laptop. You're busy, as a lot of people would be. So have you been able to make time for cycling, and at the same time, has cycling provided a release for you during these times?
Yeah, I think, it's the cycling is so completely different to everybody's day job, and especially to like on your laptop all day, like reviewing these kind of things. To have that outlet there is, I think, hugely important. And I have been, once you have structures and I suppose schedules in place, it's easy to train around work when you're working from home, because you're cutting out on any travel time that you would have had, so you're not traveling to and from work. So it frees up probably an hour and a half a day, really. So there has been ample time to train as well during the lockdown, and it has provided a great release from, I suppose, looking at a laptop all day without having those social interactions that you would have had previously.
Declan, speaking of social interactions, well, maybe not social, but lockdown had the distance barriers that you couldn't go outside a certain distance, the 2 kilometers and the 5 kilometers. But can you remember back to your first opportunity to get back on your bike and to not have distance be an issue? Was that a lift?
That was a huge lift, like, especially when they brought that you could cycle anywhere within your county. It was a big thing. Like when it was down to 2 kilometers, it just wasn't worth being on the bike, because you wouldn't get any. When the roads to maybe 5k, you were getting a 20-kilometer loop in, sort of thing. But before that, it was just spend your time on the turbo, which was just fine in one sense. But there's no, like, you're getting probably good numbers on the turbo, but you want the feel of the road to. Because even Paul, the physio, was saying people they'll start to get different niggles when they get back out on the road. They'll get the rattles of the road or whatever. So that was different, and it was it was good. It was a great feeling to get back out on the road.
Did you find, and this goes to all three of you if any want to jump in, but did you find when those restrictions were lifted that you had to hold yourself back a little and not get too excited and not cycle too far or do too much in one go? Did you have to control yourself?
But there was a bit of that, all right. You were trying to maybe go for 4 hours where you were only supposed to do 3 or that, so, and you to go looking for a hill to climb, that sort of thing. But no, it was a good feeling to get a couple of time trials in was good as well, like, because I was starting to get a bit rusty there and wondering where your power was at for, say, 20 minutes, because to do a 20-minute test without a time trial sometimes you can just feel as if I'm not able to do this, and I have enough done. Whereas if you're time trial and there's 5 or 6 other people there, maybe 10 other cyclists there, at least you're trying to be a few of them and see how you're at,
So it appeals to your competitive mindset.
It does, yeah.
And Richael, you've had similar now. So all of you guys are starting to get back into some level of domestic competition. What's it been like to get out with other people on the road and to be competing against somebody again? What has it changed things for you in the last few months?
Yeah, I suppose I kind of would be someone who'd love kind of the competition side of it. Like, that's kind of why I got into it in the first place. So for me, just training away and having no competition, like, it was hard. I was doing all the training, but no matter how hard I'd go in a test, we'll say on the turbo, I don't get I get the best out of me when I'm racing against someone else. Like, and when you're not really thinking about, I need to hold a specific power for a specific amount of time, like, you're just chasing after someone. So yeah, I got back doing TTs. So when the restrictions lifted a bit, they were in County Galway. So I actually live in County Galway. So I was able to kind of go between Roscommon and Galway. So there was loads of local clubs that opened up for TTs. And the way a time trial works is, like, they were sending one person off and then the next person would go after a minute. So we weren't in a bunch, like, so it was good for the social distancing. And as well for me, so because of my underlying condition, I was kind of told to stay at home and not be interacting. Obviously at the start of it, especially when people didn't know, how to stop yourself getting the virus or that sort of stuff. So the TTs, I was able to go and do them. Like, I'd go do my warm up and then do it and you'd be back straight home. Like, there was no kind of staying around after and that. So yeah, the club leagues, it was with Seven Springs Cycling Club there in Galway, and they just ran like a 6-week different distances every week. So it was brilliant just to get back, especially on the TT bike. Like, I remember the first one, must have been 6 weeks ago now or more, and like, I was on my TT bike. I hadn't been on the TT bike since the World Championships last year, like, because there had been no competition and you train on your road bike, like, and like, I could barely balance it. But then again, like, it's just trying to train that back in, especially with me and the brain injury. Like, I just need that memory. So to get back on it and you have one every week, it kind of helps and it gives you something to focus on. So the first few weeks were the same distance, so you're just trying to beat your speed or your time every week, like. So yeah, it was really good, and it was good to get back. And then as well, to kind of, for me to compare my times to last year's, like, obviously I knew I had done the training during lockdown, but like, I found that I wasn't really getting the numbers and I needed to get out and do a race to show that I had got better and I had improved. So it was really good to do that, yeah.
It sounds great. That first TT, did you feel like it was Christmas morning? Standing there with your bike and ready to go.
I was just like, I wouldn't really be mad on TTs, as in, it's something obviously that takes a lot of time to get used to, but it had given me this opportunity. Now I was going to do 6 TTs, like, one every week. So I had to, when I went out and did the first one, I obviously got new power and heart rate things, and it made you realize that all the work you had put in during the lockdown and on the turbo and all that was paying off. Because I think there was a period during lockdown where I was kind of like, am I getting better, or is this training actually working? Because didn't really see myself improving. But then at the first TT, like, it was clear straight away. So it was really good, and it kind of pushes you on as well to go harder the next time. Or, when you are getting better, I think, especially for me, if I know I'm improving, like, I want to improve more, like, that sort of way. So
Ronan, the same to you. Have you been able to compete in some of the domestic competitions?
Yeah, I've been racing domestically now for the last probably 6 weeks, maybe a bit less. But so I race in the A1, A2 level in Ireland. So that's the highest level that you can race in. And really, it's just, like, I'll never get an ego because those races are so hard that I just keep on
That's racing against able-bodied people as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. So I just keep on getting brought down to a level, yeah. So it's been really tough. I mean, the domestic scene this year is really strong. There'd have been a lot of racers that probably in previous years would have been racing abroad in France or Belgium that are now racing in Ireland for the year, which the standard is just so much higher than it has been previously. And there's been so fewer races as well that it means that every race is oversubscribed and has all the top racers from the country attending. So just, yeah, the level has been really high, and they've been really tough races, but it's good to get that standard of racing in a year where a few months ago it looked like that wasn't going to happen at all.
And your performances in those, how have they compared? Because you were obviously in really good form just before lockdown. You had a brilliant Worlds, everything was going great. So has your performance dipped, or are you at the same level? Like, how is that?
I'd say, I mean, physically and numbers wise, I'm stronger than I would have been at any stage previously, but it's just comparing a paracycling race to a top level domestic race in Ireland. Like a paracycling race would probably be maybe not easier, but the numbers in the races are smaller, so it's easier to show or easier to get a result in. It's easier to I suppose compete, whereas if you're racing against 80 top level racers, it's difficult to get a result, particularly if you're not able to sprint. So yeah, it's I mean, racing at that level can only bring you on for paracycling, but it means I don't think I'll ever be making the headlines here.
No, but if you'll make the headlines internationally, hopefully.
I mean, that's it. Like, it means if you can, it's a good like barometer. If you're able to race and be active in races here, that once you go racing internationally in paracycling races, you'll be competitive. So I mean, you can judge yourself off where you are in the races here, and I suppose it kind of gives you an indication that once you do paracycling races, you'll probably be in good form.
Declan, for you, have you had domestic competition? Because on a hand cycle, I would imagine there aren't as many people that you can really benchmark yourself against.
No, but I'm benching myself off a few that I was doing that league Rochelle was on about. There were 7 springs in Loughrea. I was benching myself off a few people, and here the other night I caught my 2-minute man who's on an able-bodied bike, so that was a good indicator where I was going. And it's great to be getting them TTs in, because it's not so much all about the TT, it's all about the nutritional work you do before that, and getting yourself primed for that, and getting your equipment in shape, and making sure everything is right that way, and trying out different wheels on a different night just to see will there's something change different to help you out on that TT. So as regards, I think I'm happy enough that it's great to get the TTs in anyway.
And that kind of routine as well. I mean, you can't replicate that on a turbo or anything like that. So going through that routine must be good as well.
Going through the routine is very important. Like, getting your bike prepped that day before you go to the TT, making sure that your brakes, like, probably having so much time off, I'm probably spending too much time with the bike, polishing it and cleaning the chains and making sure everything is perfect before I go to a time trial now. And probably trying to wonder, can I get a lighter bolt that will fit there? Trimming his back as best I can to try different things every time you go out. Try a disc wheel tonight, try the deep section wheel the next night, just to see will that gain you a couple of seconds.
And are they?
They're not doing too bad. I had a good time trial the other night now, so
great.
I'm trying to break the 40k bracket average. So once I get over that, I'll be happy enough. I was 39.8 the other night, so just nearly there.
We'll be watching closely. Richael, so this week marks a year to go. Well, right now we should be in Tokyo, but it now marks a year to go to the games. So obviously we don't know exactly what the calendar is going to be. We have a good idea about the road Worlds being next June, the track being in March. I think there are events on the calendar, but the other events that you would normally have gone to, we're still not 100% sure on where they will land. So looking forward towards Tokyo next year, and assuming those events go ahead, are you looking forward to Tokyo? Has this changed has the lockdown changed everything for you? Are you still fully focused on Tokyo and ready to go and compete, assuming qualification is achieved?
Yeah, definitely. I think for me, giving me the extra year has actually benefited me massively. Like, I suppose if I had gone to Tokyo this year, like I was going to obviously try my best and go to compete, but there's some very strong girls in my category, whereas I think another year's training can bring me even closer to them. Like, so, it'll be interesting to see. There's going to be 2 World Cups next year that will have qualification points. So they'll be the last events that you can qualify points through. So it'll be interesting to go to them and see where the other girls are at, because really now you would have seen them through we would have had World Cups this year and a World Championships. So you would have got to see them before Tokyo, see where everyone is. And the last time I would have seen any of them would have been at the Track Worlds, and even then I suppose I was closer to them than I had nearly expected myself. So having that extra year is definitely going to help me massively. But I think there are extra competitions next year that don't have qualification points. But I think with COVID, and if it's still there, it'll be interesting to see whether it's worth the risk to go to these competitions or whether you're just better off training at home. So for me, you have to look at that as well. Should I just stay at home and get all the training done, or should I risk traveling to a country that you wouldn't know, going on a plane and all that with COVID? So I think that'll be decided obviously by Cycling Ireland, by Neil and that sort of thing. But yeah, definitely it'll be interesting to see next year when the competitions do start where I am in regards to the girls in my category, and as well where they are, because I'm thinking obviously I'm improving, but if you're improving, so is everyone else in your category, and everyone else has that extra year. So yeah, it's interesting, but I'm definitely just looking forward to Tokyo next year, and in my head that's where I'm going, and that's where I'll be trying to peak for. And hopefully, this will give me extra time to focus on maybe the aspects that I wouldn't be as strong at. So the TTs and that, I would see myself being better at a road race, whereas now I have a lot of time to focus on my TT. So that's what I'm going to do. So yeah, it's the extra year is good for me. Definitely, I can't say anything bad about it. I know some people might have been thinking, it's their last games, or they're trying to peak for now, and now they have to try and hold it. But for me, I'm just trying to get better every day. So it's definitely a benefit in me, yeah.
Ronan, would you be of similar mindset to Richael there?
Yeah, I think an extra year is always beneficial when you're improving. If you haven't reached the ceiling yet, a bit more time to train is welcome. But it's just, yeah, that point Michelle made there about what your other competitors are doing at the same time. There's a lot of I think at the start I would have focused a lot on what other people were doing, and that can play an awful lot on your mind then if you're thinking other people are training more than you or they're improving more than you. So for me, for the time being, I'm just going to train as if train like everything is going ahead until you're told something isn't going ahead, but just focus on my own training. I think in the past I would have focused a bit too much on what other people were doing and let that impact too much on my own thought process going into races. So I think it's just trust that process of going through all the training that you are prescribed and doing it as you're supposed to do it, and then just trust that is going to lead you stronger and will improve your performances rather than thinking too much on what others are doing.
Yeah, and Declan, you've been there before, you know what it takes. Are you going to draw on that experience throughout the next year?
I am, yeah, because more than Ronan, I do probably spend a bit too much time wondering about what other bikes are doing. Even though Ronan wouldn't be great for talking to the others, he'd leave the talking to the others to me, I think, a lot of the time. But
no better man.
I've totally kind of focused now on just what I can control, and just hopefully improving my power and get myself ready. I've been there before at the games, so this time I think it's going to be for the cycling side of it, it's going to be the very same as just going to another World Cup, because we're so far away from the main event. So it's basically just like an ordinary World Cup for us, or World Championships, that we're going to, more so than the games, from where we're situated. We won't actually even nearly see what the opening ceremony or closing ceremony, maybe the closing ceremony, but we're just it's just going to be a get in there, get it done, and come home, and hopefully come home with medals with us.
Fingers crossed. And you three guys do seem like you're in good shape and physically and mentally, and ready to take on the challenge. So on behalf of everyone, want to wish you all very well in the next year, and that when the opportunity comes, that your performances match the clearly good mindset that you guys have right now.
Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.